Arctic island, which is part of the Danish kingdom and a NATO ally. And the capture of Maduro has breathed life into this sphere. Denmark's Prime Minister has warned that if the United States attacks Greenland, it could mean the end of the NATO itself.
Firstly, I believe that the American president should be taken seriously when he says that he wants Greenland. But I also want to make it clear that if the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops. That is including our NATO and thus the security that has been provided since the end of the Second World War.
Greenland's leadership too has hit back. It has called the talk of annexation a fantasy and has told Trump that enough is enough. But Europe is eerily silent, looking the other way. European leaders say Greenland's future lie only with Greenland and Denmark. It must be noted that the shortest route for the US military and its ballistic missile system from Europe to North America runs via Greenland, making it a key strategic location for both EU and US. Greenland is also a member of the NATO. Analysts warn what happened in Venezuela may now become a dangerous precedent. While Russia and China have condemned the attack on Venezuela, both may quietly calculate opportunities, especially if Washington normalizes regime change by force. So my big question is, will Greenland attack become a reality? Will it break NATO? Why does US want Greenland now? Why is Trump talking about it? And will Russia and China get more aggressive? Is it possible to stop Americans from land grab? US is behaving like Germany of World War II. But let me introduce my guests. I'm joined by Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, former Indian diplomat, Major General Rajan Kochar, and Dr. Ariel Cohen, Senior Fellow, Atlantic Council. Thank you all of you for joining me. Let me straight away go to Ambassador Dayal. Ambassador, just to break it down for our viewers, why is Trump so interested in Greenland?
Well, you know, geopolitical tensions surrounding Greenland have escalated following statements from President Donald Trump regarding the potential for the US to control this territory. Trump has recently said that he intends to acquire Greenland and described its annexation as an absolute necessity for US national security. He has said that he has frequently come to know about the presence of Russian and Chinese ships in the Arctic. Now, he has downplayed interest in its mineral resources, though his aides often highlight its wealth in rare earth minerals. Now, Trump has mocked Denmark's defense of the island and in fact jokingly claimed that Denmark had only added one more dog sled for security. He has also said that they are incapable of safeguarding the territory. Now, while Trump had initially offered to buy the island in 2019, he has more recently declared he will get it one way or the other. Now, observers note that Trump views Greenland through a lens of hemispheric dominance. Will NATO collapse with a Greenland attack? You know, Danish and European leaders have warned that a US military move to annex Greenland would lead to the dissolution of NATO. A Danish prime minister has said that if the US chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops, explicitly, including the NATO alliance. Now, NATO is built on collective defense. The Article 5 states that. And when there is an attack on one, it will be an attack on all. So experts note that an internal attack on the alliance's most powerful, or rather an attack by the most powerful member against another would create a legal and political paralysis, as the US would block the consensus required for formal NATO action. So Nordic experts and major allies like the UK and Germany have expressed full support for Danish sovereignty over Greenland. And some European officials suggest that European nations might have to work towards organizing a separate defense structure if the NATO framework falls. So at the moment, things are in a very precarious situation.
Dr. Cohen, the issue is that people say that, you know, there's always a counterbalance. For example, 200 years ago, France in continental politics of Europe was always balanced by then Great Britain, UK. There was always a counterbalance. Isn't there a counterbalance available in form of China and Russia, or Greenland is up for Trump's taking?
Well, first of all, my approach to these issues is if it's not broken, don't fix it. NATO played its role in European security since its establishment in 1949, with the United States being the pivotal central power. The English-speaking countries, US, UK, and Canada, were responsible for about 80% of the NATO budget. Greenland can be protected with the United States or Canadian or joint European forces. There is no immediate necessity, in my view, for the United States to annex Greenland. So why do we need to create this conflict within NATO that, as you pointed out, may lead to a threat to NATO existence, when the real threats to the West collectively are China and Russia and Iran? So I do not understand why does President Trump need to escalate the rhetoric around Greenland? And also, if it's so important for him, why not negotiate with Denmark, which also, let's be frank, for the last 300 years, it is a colonial power of the Europeans dominating indigenous people of Greenland. But I could propose a pathway in which there is a referendum and all options are on the table: the status quo, independence of Greenland, or some kind of an alliance with the United States, and let the people of Greenland decide. Single track, one-sided rhetoric, such as offered by President Trump, I think the downside is escalation within NATO with our European allies, when the unfinished business of the war in Ukraine, that UK and US were co-signatories on the Budapest Protocol that guaranteed sovereignty of Ukraine, and one of the sides to the Budapest Protocol, Russia, violated it, as well as other treaties it signed with Ukraine. Why do we need the internal NATO conflict when the Russian issue, and eventually down the road, of course, the Taiwan issue vis-a-vis China, is on the table?
Okay, General Kocha, in terms of defense, why is Greenland so important? We understand, and the news is now in public domain, that one of the most advanced anti-ballistic missile systems the Americans have installed in South Korea. That is why this entire Korean pact with the South Korean army is so important. This system operates from there. Even before it becomes critical and approaches space, the Americans can down the ballistic missiles emanating from North and even the China. But what purpose Greenland serves for the American security? I'm not going into the word which the Ambassador Dayal used, hegemony, in terms of Northern Hemisphere. I really want you to address this issue of security. But what will they get in terms of defense?
Okay, thank you, Kartikeya. I think it's a contextual question because it is related to the thinking of Donald Trump. If you look at Greenland, Russia occupies a very large coastal area in the Arctic Ocean. And the northern fleet of the Russians is located at Kola Bay. That is an area, and if you see the distance to the United States or to Alaska or that part of America, that is the shortest distance Russia has in case Russia wants to launch an attack. Russia has a submarine base at Kola Bay, and it's got a substantial amount of its forces, defense forces, which patrol this entire area, and especially after this climate change has actually opened and the northern sea routes have become accessible. China's interest has also been there, and we have seen a large number of Chinese ships coming into the Arctic Ocean and doing their mineral exploration and research activities and things like that. So, wherever President Trump is seeing an opportunity of vulnerability, and especially in the Arctic Ocean after the warming of the water and the northern sea routes, etc., Trump has a feeling that there is a vulnerability here. He has air base and a space base in a northwestern part of Greenland, if you see that, and he has early warning radars and his entire defense system. And in the last 3 years or 2 years, I would say that uh, a strengthening of this air base or this base which America has in Greenland has been observed. Uh, and therefore, I think Trump visualizes from a security point of view. Of course, Greenland, all the untapped natural resources and rare earth elements, etc., are also there in Greenland, which Trump also looks into that because he's a transactional kind of a person who always looks into these aspects also. But from the security point of view, since you asked me, America gets vulnerable here. A large number of exercises, naval exercises now, because earlier it was a no-go, but now seasonally, almost 6 to 8 months in a year, the ships can move around this area, do the exercises. The northern fleet of the Russians have been carrying out exercises in this area. So that is the kind of vulnerability I think President Trump is foreseeing, and therefore his method may not be correct because making such statements I think are in violation to the charter of NATO, and it is going to break the NATO or create a divide in the NATO, which I think
So basically,
Russia
sir,
also.
basically you're saying that the climate change has created a new great game. There was a great game of 19th century of the Himalayas. This is the new great game with the melting of the Arctic. General Kocher?
No, absolutely. You see, this entire problem of security was not there when the climate change aspect was not there because this was a no-go area, and we hardly saw any movements, any exercises, any kind of offensive maneuvers in this area. But after this
Okay.
climate changes occurred, a large number of minerals can be accessed now. There is a sea life also which can be explored here. The oil and gas natural resources are also
Okay.
now available. So it becomes very, very lucrative, as a matter of fact, for Russia and China, especially in the last couple of years, we have seen enhanced Chinese activity in this area.
Okay.
And with Russia and China, getting together now, I think America visualizes a greater threat.
Okay. Dr. Cohen, you wanted to comment? You raised your hand.
Yeah, I think there is even a bigger overall question, overarching question. We saw a unilateral action in Venezuela. Yes, there was a precedent. There was a taking out of Manuel Noriega in Panama a while ago under President George H.W. Bush. I believe it was 1990. But the unilateral action in Venezuela and the talk about Greenland create conditions where U.S., instead of being a model of behaving with restraint, it creates a precedent after which China can go and say, oh, we decide to take Taiwan. Russia goes, say, we decide to go take the Baltic states. Trump already indicated that Trump, is not very interested in defending European countries in case of a conflict with Russia. European countries theoretically, by their GDP, are probably close to 10 times bigger than Russia in terms of GDP, but are not necessarily a match currently in terms of military power. What will happen 5, 10 years from now in terms of German, French, British military power? Too early to tell. But right now, Russia is a dominant power in Europe without the United States. So this may open the Pandora's box to a change, a radical change in terms of the balance of power in Western Hemisphere with Venezuela and Greenland, and an Eastern Hemisphere with Russia and China saying we can behave in the unilateral way, disregarding what was considered a system of international law after World War II, a wobbly system, imperfect system, but nevertheless now it looks like it's being cast aside in front of our own eyes as we speak.
You know, there's an old saying, more things change, more they remain the same. Ambassador Dayal, as a school-going child, I would remember a section of the NCERT text on sphere of influences in China. I never thought that 20 years down the line, I would be holding a show and talking about sphere of influence in the Western Hemisphere. So, sir, my question to you is, will Russians and the Chinese become more aggressive? And what is the future of NATO you foresee, sir?
Well, you know, certainly the instability within NATO will be an opportunity for Russia and China to advance their interests in the Arctic and beyond. Now, both Russia and China have increased their military and economic activities in the Arctic. Russia's northern fleet is already rehearsing how to repel military threats in the northern seas. Now, Danish sources have warned that if NATO is diverted by internal conflicts, then Russia may feel emboldened to assert its influence in the northern Atlantic. Of course, the Russia-China alliance is not a formal military alliance like NATO, but these two countries have a partnership which they call a no-limits partnership. And this partnership continues to deepen. So increased Chinese and Russian activities in the Arctic are likely to trigger armed confrontations with the US or other NATO allies in 2026. So there is what would be said as a strategic wedge. You know, Greenland serves as a strategic wedge. And this could heighten in case tensions within NATO develop, for Russia will exploit these tensions to pursue its long-term goal of weakening or in fact dismantling NATO.
Your personal assessment, sir, in terms of Trump, in case the Russians become more aggressive in the northern Arctic states like Latvia and others?
Well, Trump should be keeping an eye on that. But if he wants to take over Greenland, then certainly this sends out some very dangerous signals for other NATO countries. And already there have been strong reactions from them. So what Trump has said in regard to Greenland doesn't augur very well for NATO itself and for how the Russians might look at the entire situation and see what they can do, not only to weaken NATO, but also to expand their own influence in this area.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you for joining me. So this was On Point 2, and the On Point 2 was about if Donald Trump is going to revisit the issue of Greenland in 20 days, what is the world going to do? And if he decides to just take over Greenland, where will be the response? How will be the response? And who is going to respond to the American naked imperialism and unilateralism in global affairs? Now let's move forward because it's time for On Point 3. In on point 3, we will discuss the centre's new directive, which is to fix the local, to improve the tourist experience in India, because the decision making process in the government of India has shown that not only we are falling short of hotels, but India also falls short of a high-end qualitative experience of tourism. Now, this is a serious issue because the Prime Minister has been talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat. Prime Minister has been talking about domestic tourism. Prime Minister has been saying that, money should be spent in India. Prime Minister Modi has been saying that tourism is just not one activity. It spurs the GDP. It creates more job. It creates local economy. It creates new industries. It helps multiple sectors within our economy: the food, the beverages, the hotels, the tertiary sector, the retail sector. People get employed. People get local employment. So, tourism is something very important. But in what is being touted as the fix the local first strategy, let me tell you, the centre has issued a directive to state governments to prioritize the cleanup of tourist destinations in India. The matter was taken up at a recently held National Conference of Chief Secretaries in Delhi last week. Tourism Secretary V. Vidya Avathi told the Chief Secretaries that while India has enormous tourism potential, bad tourism experience can damage the country's reputation globally, because tourism also acts like brand ambassador. Atithi Devo Bhava, one of the campaigns that was launched by the government. Now, the central government flagged poor sanitation, hygiene, traffic chaos, and a shortage of quality hotel rooms as major bottlenecks hurting India's tourism potential. The government stressed that most of the problems of the tourist spots are linked to the local governance, including poor infrastructure, lack of basic facilities, weak coordination between agencies. Now, states have also been asked to prioritize destination management and fix local level problems first. Chief secretaries were asked to work closely with urban bodies, local administration and tourism department to identify problem areas and create time-bound plan for improvement. The centre is also aiming to integrate state-level urban development departments to tackle urban decay. The action has been driven by increasing concerns that overcrowding, unmanaged waste, illegal construction and chaotic traffic are hurting the experience at top destinations, be it hill stations, heritage towns or coastal hotspots. Moreover, the centre is also focusing on professional hospitality and good hotel infrastructure. The government has separately highlighted gaps in hotel capacity, especially at high footfall location. The development is crucial, keeping in mind Modi government's aggressive push for temple tourism to boost India's temple economy, which contributes approximately to 2 to 3% to the GDP. The tourism economy on the whole contributes 5% to the GDP. But the issue is we are falling even short of hotels. I am joined by Jyoti Mayal, Chairperson Tourism and Hospitality Skill Council and former President Travel Agents and Association of India. She joins me live from London. Thank you, Madam, for joining me. Madam, one hand we are falling short of 4 lakh hotels. On the other hand, we are talking about garbage, we are talking about high-end experience. I mean, or can we afford to have a Bhutan or a Bali sort of a thing, where we can organize tourism differently?
So thank you, Kartikeya, for having me here, and wish you a very happy new year.
Thank you.
Yes, I think it's a very thoughtful comment, actually, fix the local first, because I think the centre's push to clean up and professionally manage India's tourist hubs has been long overdue. But strategically a very smart move now, because I think for years India's tourism potential has been held back, not by a lack of attractions, but by poor local infrastructure, overcrowding, fragmented management. The idea of creating this destination management organization in every state, especially, I think is very promising, because it shifts the focus from ad hoc beautification to a very systematic, accountable, on-ground management. And that's what we need, because I think we need to strengthen the local infrastructure. And like you just said, tourism cannot thrive if basic services like cleanliness, mobility, signage, sanitation, are broken, Fixing these needs to build. And of course, then only the credibility comes in, because people would love to go to a heritage site like you just pointed out. But, the last mile connectivity, the cleanliness is a dampener to the tourists. So I think that these things need to be taken into our stride, and I really sometimes fail to understand this, and we've had this discussion earlier with you too, that, why don't the states get up by themselves and start doing these things also? It has to be driven by the center, it's fine, but I think every state has the capability of doing this, and they have not, and, trying to do their best. But I would say it very straightforwardly, every state is trying to copy another one, and actually losing out the main crux, what is required for tourism. So I think, we need to look into these parts, what you just said about the cleanliness and signage, the last mile connectivity. You go to a lovely heritage property, but the way you reach to that property is not the best experience that you get. So, how do we build that infrastructure? How do we make India a different, destination? It has to come by a destination management organizations, and these need to come into place. And these don't have to be only government driven. And I'm going to say this, people like us who are actually working with all the travel partners in this country should be involved more and more. And, that's the way we will evolve. It doesn't have to be only a government drive. We have to do it jointly.
India is a big country. We can't have a Bhutan model. We can't have that Bali model whereby, say, if you have money, only come to Bali. It's a big country. It's a, billion people live here. You will have a low-end tourism. You have a budget tourism. It's democratic, You'll have to accommodate every sort of a tourist expectation. That's very well understood. But my question here is that there is also an over-construction. Our hills are getting crowded, our beaches are getting crowded. You look at Goa, what has happened to the beaches, So, or if we talk about pristineness, then there is lot of built-in infrastructure, suffocating that natural beauty. But on the other hand, we are also not able to get in crowds, like 1 crore people come to India, 3 crore people go outside. And then there is this dichotomy, madam, that it's easier to go to Southeast Asia, cheaper, better experience, than to book yourself in Rajasthan and Goa in January or Pondicherry in January. It's too expensive.
True. I totally agree with you. And that's the way, I think somehow, till the time we don't get there, and we've been saying this on since so many years. I was the president for 5 years, and we kept harping on this, that, tourism somehow needs to have a lower GST also, because the taxes are driving business away to countries like Thailand and, Bali and other destinations which have it all. So why would you spend more in a country which doesn't have it all? And especially, again, the cleanliness and the safety is a big concern when an international traveler walks in. Of course, you said reducing overcrowding at legacy destinations.
Cleanliness
like
and women's
Goa,
safety,
Manali.
madam. I should have put that line on my show. Women's safety, very important for tourism. No country can have good tourism if women are not safe.
Right. So these are the concerns that we need to actually, actually invest in ourselves, because creating holistic tourist experience is very, very important. The government is right that India doesn't just need more hotels, but it needs curated experiences, walkable zones, cultural circuits, better last mile connectivity again. We need to empower states and local bodies. DMOs play a very big role in every country. Like we talk about Thailand just now. Thailand has a tourism authority which works very, very hand in glove with the government itself. It's a government body, but the way it performs is very different than what every government performs. So it looks totally focused on travel and tourism, say what happens it. But so we need to build this, we need to empower the states and local bodies. The DMOs can bring coordination between tourism, urban development, environment, local communities. Something India has lacked for decades. Safety, of course, safety and cleanliness are two parts that we really need to give attention more, because those two things are something that drives the, I'm in London right now, like you just said, and there's so many times people who've not been to India. That's the first question they ask me every time. Is India clean? Are you sure we won't get a bug there? We're hearing about Delhi pollution. We are hearing there are parts that are going to make our body with negative, things that we will be actually losing out on our health. And then safety. Are women safe there? Are we safe there? Are we going to be mugged? And these questions, you get tired of answering them. So why don't we bring a holistic view to the traveler and bring it out there that we are a safe country? These incidents happen everywhere.
Absolutely.
And how do we bring that to something that every destination has?
Absolutely. Jyoti, you really, I think women's safety and this the whole mess of plastic, I think, and the pollution now. Pollution, which is the environment. I think these are the three key things which are very instrumental in defining the experience of a tourist. You know, I've really run short of time. I wish, you know, we could have spoken at length. And I know you have lot to say.
You must talk about even skills coming forward.
Absolutely, I'll do that, and I promise you, and you'll be part of my show. Thank you. This is all I had.
Thank you, Kartikeya.
See you very soon. See you soon in Delhi. So I'll see you tomorrow again at 7 p.m. Thank you and good night.